And I really think they do need to go with all 3 picks on defense in the first round. I'm not sure they think that, but man, there are some good defensive players in this draft. And
I mean, that guy was phenomenal last year.
But you want a linebacker, in my opinion, that can cover running backs, can cover the tight ends. Killed this defense last year.
Mac guys on a Football Friday here on Birds 365. Thanks for streaming on in. While you're at it, like, join, subscribe to us here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Please help us with our algorithm. Our next guest will do just that too, because the amount of insight that he brings has to run the algorithm up, does it not, Johnny Matt? When Ed Kracz joins us, don't you think our algorithm gets better?
Yeah, it spikes. It spikes to unprecedented levels. That's the great Ed Kracz, as I like to call him. Good to see you, Ed.
Hey guys, I'm not sure what an algorithm is, but I think my doctor might have given me medicine for it some time ago. I don't know.
It's the all-encompassing term for our analytics, which I also don't understand what analytics and sports are. So it's the all-encompassing term of analytics. We got to get our analytics up, Ed.
All right, Ed. I didn't think I was going to be asking this question today. What color blue is that? It's popping.
I'm going to go royal blue.
You're looking good there. Is that like Dodger blue or
I'm
Mets
go royal blue? Am I right? That's my guess. Royal blue.
I'm not. I don't know. Maybe it's a deep azure. I think.
Oh,
as well.
Wow.
I wouldn't have known. See, McMullen goes royal, you go azure. I'm trying to tie it to a team. If it's not tied to a team color, I got no damn idea what color. It's got to be a Dodger blue or a Ram blue or somebody else's blue. It can't just be a real.
Well, that's what it's the Kansas City Azures. That's what it is. Kansas City Azures. No, it's Royals. Come on. We're going to stipulate to royal blue. At least I am. What do I care what anybody else thinks?
It looks good on you, Ed. I'm just saying.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. Yeah, it's just something I threw on here. Yeah, I was immediately thinking of my Crayola crayon pack from years ago.
There you go. That's where you get the colors. Yeah. What was in the box of 64? Which blue was that in 64?
Azure.
Yeah.
There you go. All right, so you're going.
That's impressive coming up with that poll, by the way, Ed. I would have went burnt sienna, but that's the only one I could think of. That's not going to work with a blue shirt with my crayon box. But speaking of crayon boxes, let's do that segue. The Eagles have a big crayon box when it comes to the first round of this draft. They got the big 64 pack with 3 first-round picks. You don't often have that. So I'll start there because you and I did our first Eagles-only mock drafts at si.com/NFL/Eagles. Now, you went 3 defenders. Now understand, let me just stipulate that I think we both think Howie's going to maneuver. I'm not necessarily – there's going to be 3 picks, and certainly not at number 15, 16, 19. But we haven't even hit the combine yet, so we're just looking at talent. If they're forced to take 3 picks, you really think they're disciplined enough? And Jeffrey Lurie would allow them to not look at, hey, you got to get one offensive player. We got an offensive head coach. That's what modern football is about. You really think they'd be disciplined enough to take 3 defenders?
No, but that's why that's why I'm doing these mock drafts, though, because it makes for good good speculation. But boy, if they did, that would just be completely surprising. But you could turn that around and say, do you see them taking a wide receiver in the first round 3 straight years? And again, my answer would be no to that. I just don't see them going in that direction. I think they're going to load up at that spot in free agency. I think they're going to try to get, obviously, at least 1, maybe 2 receivers in free agency. And I just don't see them taking one in the first round. So where else are you going to go except defense? You could go offensive line with, some of the names that have been out there, the Kenyon Green from Texas A&M or the Zion Jackson of Boston College. But they have to look at this defense and say, man, we got to get Gannon some help here, because I think our contention all year has been is it's not just Gannon that kind of struggled, putting together a scheme and combating these Super Bowl type quarterbacks that they played all year long. A lot of it was personnel, and man, I really think they do need to go with all 3 picks on defense in the first round. I'm not sure they think that, but man, there are some good defensive players in this draft. And if you come away with an edge, a corner, a safety, or a linebacker in that mix, I mean, that to me is a home run, because there are good players that I don't think you could miss on defense with those picks.
Let me frame it this way. If all 3 of us are right, that there's a better chance the Eagles are going to make 2 first-round picks than 3, that Howie will probably maneuver, trade down, trade out, go to next year, that they'll end up taking 2 of the 3 picks, not all 3. If they only have, and it sounds funny to say it, only 2 picks, because you're only supposed to have 1, but if they only have 2 picks and they go 1 defense, 1 offense, you don't think that opens them up for criticism with how badly their defense needs upgrading? If you've only got 2, if you choose to drop out and put 1 forward to next year to give you flexibility next year, or give you 2 multiple second-round picks as compared to a late first-round pick, if they don't use both of them on defense, I think Howie Roseman is going to get crushed by Eagle Nation. Agree or disagree?
Listen, this town does love defense, but I think there's an evolution with offense. I mean, people love this sexy pick of a wide receiver, a guy like a Jameson Williams at Alabama. And man, what a great receiver he looks like on tape, and watching him play for Alabama. He's got height, he's got speed. He also has a torn ACL that you don't know how that would impact any of those skill sets. But I think this town likes the sexy pick of a receiver, of a quarterback, of a running back, someone that handles the football.
Remember who's making the pick.
Yeah.
It's Howie. Flip a coin if he's going to get it right at best at wide receiver Roseman. In general speaking, I think you're right. But it's Howie's going to be making the pick. So how much is Eagle Nation going to trust Howie to take another receiver in the first round?
Well, you said it yourself. His track record is not very good. In fact, what receiver have they drafted? I mean, Nelson Aguilar had a good 2017, but he was picked 20th or 21st in the draft. Not good enough. You need to have more than just one good year.
Yeah.
So, his track record of picking receiver is not good, and that's why I think they have to go free agent, the free agent route. Bring in proven guys. They did it in 17. They brought in Jeffrey. They brought in Torrey Smith. And that was putting weapons around Carson Wentz. And now Howie said the same thing, is we want to put weapons around Jalen Hurts. And I think that's how they're going to do it, free agency. And I just don't think they're going to take a receiver. I mean, Matt Millen took 3 receivers in the first round for 3 straight years back in the early O's with the Lions. None of them worked out. I mean, Megatron was one of them. I mean, great
he worked
pick,
out.
Yeah, he worked. He got one right.
Yeah.
But you just can't keep spinning your wheels like you're in the mud or something. You just can't do that in the NFL.
Well, the Eagles already did it, and they finally got it right. I think we all agree they got it right with Devontae Smith last year. So they at least got one. But then you don't think about the domino effect of, well, if J.J. Arcega-Whiteside turns into a player, you don't necessarily need Jalen Reagor. If Jalen Reagor turns into a player, you certainly don't need Devontae Smith, because you have 2 receivers, Jalen Reagor and J.J., and then you could start talking about Micah Parsons or Justin Fields or somebody else in last year's draft. So there's always a domino effect to these picks, and whether they're hits or misses. But the Eagles finally got 1 receiver. The problem is you need more in the modern NFL. So they got to go find them somewhere. And I'm with you, Ed. They got to go to free agency and get a proven commodity, because they have not proven. And I put Devontae Smith off to the side because he was very refined when he got here as a route runner. He stepped into the Eagles camp and he was already their best route runner. So I give Nick Saban and the people down there the credit for developing Devontae Smith more than the Eagles. That might be harsh or not. I agree from that perspective. Now, here's where I want to turn the page. You mentioned Jalen Hurts. You mentioned getting weapons around Jalen Hurts. We always talk about the quarterback. started to bring this up this week because people are very cognizant, it seems, that, well, if you go get Russell Wilson, if you go get Deshaun Watson, you got to pay them $30+ million. And that's going to be an issue. Well, guess what? You only got one more year of Jalen Hurts. And if Jalen Hurts performs at the level he did this year, which was good, I think better than most of us thought, guess what? He's going to command $30 million. So does that make that decision? It's not only about 2022. Does that make that decision tougher that his contract extension? Think about Jordan Mailata, Josh Sweat, Dallas Goedert. They got drafted in 2018. They got the extensions last year. Jalen Hurts is 2020. You got one more year. Then the extension's up. Then you got to make your decision. Are you going to pay him or you're not going to pay him? My point is that's short-term thinking. So there's a sense of urgency with those 3 first-round picks. Do we start talking about the Kenny Pickett's of the world because you have the luxury of that 3rd-round pick? If you want to be cost-effective, you only got one more year to be cost-effective with Jalen Hurts.
Yeah. Listen, I did write about that possibility of taking a quarterback with one of those picks in the 1st round. Everybody, thinks they'll trade it away or they'll bring in Wilson and Deshaun Watson. Listen, let's forget about Wilson and Watson. Neither of those guys want to play in Philadelphia. I mean, they both have no trade clauses, and yet people still bring up that they're going to come play in Philadelphia. I just don't see that at all. And I think the next best route to take, if you're not going to go get a veteran or a veteran doesn't want to come here, is to find one in the draft. And I really think that there is a possibility, even though they need help on defense, that they could take a quarterback in the 1st round. Again, depending on their evaluations, these quarterbacks aren't supposed to be any good. But listen, the defensive line position wasn't supposed to be good in last year's draft, and they found Milton Williams. They found Teron Jackson. I mean, they did a good job finding them. Now, Teron Jackson, I don't know what his ceiling is, but Milton Williams certainly looks like a player as a foundation piece going forward. So if you do your evaluations correctly, and, I'm sure Kenny Pickett will probably go off the board. It's so hard to predict where these quarterbacks are going to go. I've seen top 10 to Carolina. Washington needs a quarterback. But, hey, if one of these guys is sitting there that they like, a Malik Willis or whoever the other, Matt Corral, who I like, if they're there at 19, I mean, the Eagles could grab him. They could also, and my favorite quarterback in this draft is Sam Howell out of North Carolina. I know, Jody's shaking his head.
Not a fan.
Suddenly my blue looks, like some kind
Carolina
of
blue. I swapped that out, Ed.
But listen, he had just a bad. He didn't have.
I think he had a crappy system, Sam Howell. So that's why it's tough to evaluate players. I think he was in a bad offense in North Carolina that didn't take advantage of his skill set. So how do you evaluate a kid like that if he's in a bad offense?
He lost a lot of pieces, right? He lost his receivers, he lost his running backs, he lost some linemen. I mean, the continuity that he had his first couple years,
a lot of good
was gone. And
think about that backfield; they're all in the NFL now,
right?
Yeah. North Carolina backfield.
Here's your Sam Howell comp. Sam Howell equals Bobby Hoying. That when Bobby Hoying had all those pieces around him in Ohio State, this kid's got a chance to be part. And then he had the game against Boomer Esiason here in Philadelphia. They were ready to erect the statue to him. He outgunned Boomer Esiason at the vet. People were ready to make him the Eagle quarterback for the next decade. No, there was a reason why Bobby Hoying was good at Ohio State. Everything around him. There was a reason why Sam Howell was very good as a sophomore at North Carolina. The guys around him. When you separate those guys from the quarterback, you see the quarterback isn't that good. Stay away from Sam Howell. Don't go there, Ed. You're gonna make a mistake. You're gonna look bad. You're gonna have to burn that blue shirt, buddy. Sam Howell's not a player.
Yeah, I'm not ready to give up on Sam Howell. Obviously, I'm not ready to take that time machine back to the Bobby Hoying days. But
that's a tough comp, Jody. That's harsh.
That is. But listen,
spot on is what it is.
Well, how about maybe Desmond Ridder? I mean, listen, my contention is if the Eagles might want a quarterback, maybe you trade back into the second round. And there's the Chicago Bears and the Seattle Seahawks are sitting there at 39 and 41 overall. They don't have first round picks. So, would you maybe trade 19 to move back to 39 or 41? And then maybe, I don't know what it would cost. Maybe you get a first round pick for that next year. I don't know what the trade value is or the point system, whatever they use to, evaluate these trade points. But, you could trade back with Chicago or Seattle, let them come up. And then you're sitting there with 2 second round picks. Maybe Desmond Ritter's there. Maybe Sam Howell or some other quarterback is sitting there that they can get with that 39th or 41st pick. And then you come back and you have the 51st pick. But, they could make a move like that. They could trade back into the second round and maybe gamble that a quarterback you like will still be there. But they're going to take a quarterback in this draft. To me, there's no question about it. And I think that there's a good chance that it could happen on day 2.
All right, Ed, let me ask you about a specific position because we're jumping around and talking first round, second round, offense, defense. Let me get narrow focus and ask about a specific position. Easy first question, yes or no answer. Do the Eagles need to upgrade at linebacker?
Yes.
Do you think they'll do so with their biggest move, meaning either a pretty well-paid free agent and or relatively high, which has got to be first 3 rounds. They've got 3 first rounds, so either first, second, or third round draft pick. If they're going to dedicate one of those 2 things to upgrade that position, which one is more likely? Getting a pretty competent, above average, maybe above what you usually pay for a starting linebacker via free agent, or they'll use one of their first, second, or third round picks on linebacker. Which one's more likely?
I'm going with – I'm not sure what's out there in free agency. I know Justin Houston's out there, an older guy that, could provide some help on the edge. I think he's technically an outside linebacker, kind of like the Ryan Kerrigan type. But I would go draft in that scenario, Jody. I think they really need to draft one. And listen, Howie's a smart guy, right? His staff's smart. You would hope that they would look at what Dallas did with Micah Parsons, drafting him, and the impact he made on that defense in this league, defensive player of the year. And they would say, you know what, we need a guy like that. Then when you throw in the fact that, hey, Jonathan Gannon likes to play with competent linebackers that can make plays. If anything, that's where you need your playmaker, is in the middle level of that defense. And if the Eagles learned anything, they saw what Parsons did. I think they have to go draft a linebacker who can make an impact. And whether that's the first round, maybe they change philosophies. I remember going to the Combine 2 years ago, last time they had it, and we talked to Howie about the linebacker position specifically, and he admitted that that's not a position where they invest a lot of resources, okay? Now, maybe they've come around on that thinking because of the way the league is now, because of what Dallas has shown with Micah Parsons. If you can find a linebacker like that, I would love Devin Lloyd from Utah at that linebacker spot, but you're going to have to do it in the first round to get him. And are they ready to invest that kind of resource in a linebacker? I would hope that they've seen where the league is going, what Gannon needs, what Dallas did with Parsons. And we got to get somebody like that. And the only way we're going to get somebody like that is if we spend a draft pick on them. And I think that's the way they're going to go. I mean, there's still going to be good linebackers in the second round should they go that way. That Muma kid from Wyoming is a good linebacker. There's a kid from Georgia, Walker, that's pretty good. I'm not sure he'll be there. I know Daniel Jeremiah has him ranked in his top 50 prospects. I can't remember his name, but I think his last name's Walker. I mean, he's a guy that could be there in the second round. I think that if they don't go linebacker first round, they're going to go linebacker second. I just don't see the type of free agent that's out there that can come in and make the kind of impact that you might be able to potentially get in the draft.
All right. Well, let's flesh that out. So let's talk linebackers. And I want to get both your thoughts on this because he's an interesting player to me, but I'll get to that. So we talk about free agency. Well, Devondre Campbell, Green Bay had a good year, but hasn't had a great career. The 2 Denver linebackers, Alexander Johnson, Josie Jewell, are free agents. They're pretty good players. Anthony Barr's a free agent. He and Jonathan Gannon have a history. Those are probably your best free agent linebackers. You mentioned some of the draft linebackers, Ed. What the hell's wrong with TJ Edwards besides his pedigree?
Well,
I mean, that guy was phenomenal last year.
But you want a linebacker, in my opinion, that can cover running backs, can cover the tight ends. Killed this defense last year. They gave up 11, 12 touchdowns to tight ends. They gave up over 1,000 yards receiving to tight ends combined. I mean, TJ Edwards, yeah, good player. I like TJ Edwards. I like him as a player, as a person. He's a good dude, but you got to find somebody that can cover the tight end.
I know it's tough to do, but if Leighton Vander Esch is a free agent as well. I don't know if Leighton Vander Esch, other than if you put the first round tag on TJ Edwards, my issue is, look, if we can get Micah Parsons, if anybody can get Micah Parsons, get Micah Parsons. But if you start chasing and thinking people are going to be Micah Parsons, you're going to be massively, massively disappointed. My thought process is people don't acknowledge what TJ Edwards has become because of that pedigree, because he's undrafted. He's always going to be undrafted. He's undrafted. Leighton Vander Esch, perfect example. He's a first-round pick. I think TJ Edwards was a better player than Leighton Vander Esch last season. Am I crazy?
No, I agree with you. I thought Edwards had a great year. You'll remember, John, 2 weeks before the Eagles actually extended and got him signed for this year, I said, you know how he likes to buy the guys in when he thinks it's team friendly and make a little bit of a speculation as to whether they're going to be good. I'd extend TJ. Boom. 2 weeks later, he extended Edwards. So, I'm a fan. I do like Levondre Campbell, though, of Green Bay. And I know he was a 4th-round pick. Again, not a great pedigree. Has jumped around to a couple teams, drafted by the Falcons. He was a damn good player for that Packer team that won the most games in the regular season this year. Sometimes guys hit a stride. I think he's going to play at 29 next year, depending on the price tag. And I know you try and stay away from this, but it's a fact of life. It's a fact of fielding a roster in the National Football League. Price tag is important. Yeah, if I could get him, I'd stick him in the middle and I'd put Edwards outside. And I think I'd upgrade my linebacker unit just by doing something like that.
Listen, that's all well and good, but how many times are the Eagles going to keep doing this linebacker dance in free agency? They just can't get that right either. I mean, they brought in these 1-year stopgap players that frankly haven't worked out.
Eric Wilson's a free agent.
That's what I'm talking about. I mean, these are Corey Nelsons of the world. I mean, LJ Fort, they never gave a chance to. He went to Baltimore. He did well. But listen, these 1-year stopgaps, enough is enough already. Give me a pedigree linebacker early in the draft. Okay, he might not be.
Eddie, you already stated it. There's 2. There's Lloyd and there's Nakobe Dean. That's it. There's 2 pedigree playmaking to make the point John just said. Yeah, can I sign up for the next Micah Parsons? Yes, we all want to do that, but we don't know who it is. If you're going to take a shot, you want a good percentage at hitting that, you got to take one of those 2 guys at the top. Other than that, you're poking and hoping in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round. You got just as good a chance of landing a player by signing another 1-year veteran guy.
Well, Michael Kendricks was a 2nd-round pick. Jordan Hicks was a 3rd-round pick. They got it right those years when they draft. Now, Davion Taylor, who knows what Davion Taylor
Yeah, they still got Davion. If he can ever stay on the field.
He can't stay on the field. He's just not dependable enough. And the same thing with Jack Driscoll, another guy that we count on the interior line that maybe do some things for the Eagles. Can't count on him either. He can't stay healthy. Go out and get a pedigree. Stop this linebacker dance already in free agency. Go get a pedigree linebacker. Okay, maybe he's not Micah Parsons, but he's better than anything you have. And you got to go identify him and draft him. Let's stop with this 1-year stopgap stuff. It worked with Nigel Bradham back in 2016 when they signed him, but it hasn't worked since. It's been 6 years. Come on, get me a linebacker that can play.
I hear you, but we need to take in the mood of Jerry Robinson. I mean, Jerry's going to be really disappointed if they take a linebacker in the 1st round. So we have to take Jerry into account too. But
I think in the year that Dick Vermeil goes into the Hall of Fame, in August, the last coach to take a linebacker in the 1st round back in 1980,
79.
How appropriate would it be in the same year that Dick Vermeil goes into the Hall of Fame in August that the Eagles draft a linebacker.
And by the way, Jerry Robinson was a really good player.
Yeah, he was.
Pro Bowl player.
Yeah.
I think he was all pro one season. You would think they said, and that's a different generation of football, obviously, where linebackers were much more important. But let's shift to that coaching staff, because Jody and I were discussing before you came on, Ed. We're pretty much done with the coaching hiring season. You see a couple assistants trickling in still as teams populate their staffs. No movement whatsoever for the Philadelphia Eagles. I think, number one, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Number two, you a little bit surprised that they didn't even make a tweak at, certain positions. We just talked about wide receiver, how they change wide receiver coaches more than they change socks because they never get it right. Are you surprised at all, especially coming off the Doug Peterson era where they scapegoated somebody basically every year? Looks like this entire staff is going to be back.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think you really needed to scapegoat anybody this year. This team overachieved, made the playoffs, won more games than it lost. Nobody expected that. So who are you going to scapegoat? I'm a little surprised, though, that maybe Aaron Moorhead's back. I know that, when Nick Sirianni came in, I think Aaron Moorhead thought he was gone. I think he even mentioned that to Jalen Reagor, that, he won't be back. And then next thing you know, he is back. So I thought maybe they might try to find a different receivers coach. But listen, in the scheme of things, I think they like what, Aaron Moorhead did. Nick Sirianni talked about Moorhead quite a bit this year about how he likes the job that he's doing. Jamal Singleton is the running backs coach. The running backs, they led the league in rushing, right? That's partly on the offensive line, partly with the running backs too. He'd helped develop some of those runners and help them have good seasons. So I don't know where you turned. Denard Wilson, I thought, did a good job with the DBs. The defensive line, maybe you could say, okay, let's find somebody different than Tracy Rocker. We only had 29 sacks. But again, I think that a lot of that is personnel. You lose Brandon Graham. You're breaking in, a rookie in Teron Jackson. Josh Sweat had a career season in terms of sacks. So I just think that, it's steady as she goes, and there's nobody to really scapegoat because of the success of the season. So why not bring back the same guys? Why not bring back continuity in year two with Nick Sirianni? You're right. I think it's a good thing, and we'll see how, if they can take another step this year. If not, then I think we'll see some movement on the staff. But right now, it's a good thing. I don't think you needed to make any moves that really are going to shake the earth too greatly. So stay the course. Why not?
Yeah, I would say tinkering was necessary, not moves that would shake the earth, and they haven't even tinkered.
What would you have done? Well, I'm just curious. What
Aaron Moorhead. You guys just brought it up. The wide receivers. Let me put it this way: despite the fact that we can all agree that the Eagles overachieved this year, which they did, I think all three of us had them at 8 wins. They won 9. They made the playoffs. So you got to go thumbs up on an overachievement. What group of players, what position did the Eagles greatly overachieve at? Other than offensive line, and we all know Stoutland's a stud, and is a key piece of the Eagles. Cornerbacks overachieve? Would you say that?
I would.
Okay.
Avante had a career year, and part of that was him just getting to play where he should have been playing. I thought Steve Nelson, a veteran guy, but I thought he was better than people expected. Darius had a Pro Bowl year. I thought the corners were pretty good. Now, they had 57 young corners, and I don't know if they're developing or not.
Adding them in. Yeah. Did we see anything out of any of them?
Well, no, but you didn't need to, in all fairness, because those guys stayed healthy, and that's part of being lucky, because your 3 corners stayed healthy for pretty much the entire season. Darius had a couple of concussion issues, but didn't even miss a game. I don't think. Did he yet? I don't think. Maybe, they sat him for obviously week 18, but
and he didn't finish a couple games, but
because
every week.
So when guys are healthy, you're not taking those 3 off the field. So it doesn't necessarily mean that those guys weren't developing behind the scenes. I will say I wasn't overly impressed with Zach McPherson when he was forced in those short stints, but it's tough to play for Darius Slay. I think overall the corners, Maddox was great. I thought Maddox was great this year, and that's a big feather in Denard Wilson's cap.
Yeah. And listen, as far as McPherson goes, a 4th-round pick. I mean, it takes guys a while at that position to kind of, unless you're a top 10 guy like a Surtain or a J.C. Horn who got hurt early, so we really don't know about him. But Surtain had a great year. But, these cornerbacks, they take time to develop. Even Trayvon Diggs, his first year certainly wasn't what it was in year 2. So, you have to cut a little slack, I think, at that position. It's one of the toughest positions to play, I think, in the NFL is that on the island cornerback spot. So, but JD, make a good point. Like, where did they overachieve? What position overachieved? And maybe cornerback a little, maybe tight end. What Dallas Goedert was, but he kind of reached he's reaching that point where we thought he could get. But Jack Stoll came in as an undrafted guy and provided them some good minutes. And Tyree Jackson, again, another guy that is having a hard time staying healthy, but he would have worked his way into that. So it's hard to identify one position group and say, yeah, that group overachieved. Maybe the running back with, Boston Scott and Jordan Howard, but we kind of knew what those guys were. So yeah, one position group to say, yeah, they overachieved is tough to do, but as a team, they overachieved.
They did. And a lot of it was tied to the offensive line, which is stout.
Yes.
All right. Want to ask you a very specific player, Ed, and how he would fit here. Prior to the hiring of the staff, basically, and not knowing what Jonathan Gannon was going to be all about, a guy I lobbied for return here to Philadelphia was Hassan Reddick. And he signed with the Cardinals, had a pretty damn good year. He's a stat getter. John, he actually gets home. Not pressures, not hits. He actually gets sacks, which I love. But his game is very special. He's a little undersized as a defensive lineman in a 3-4. Surely he's playing outside linebacker, but in a 4-3, he's a little undersized. Would Jonathan Gannon be able to get out of Hassan Reddick what it's going to cost to sign him on the free agent market this year?
Yeah, I think he would. Sure. I mean, but you're right. He's going to cost a lot. And as great as it would be to have Hassan Reddick come back home, so to speak, to Philadelphia, where he played his college ball at Temple, it's going to cost a lot of money. But boy, I'd love to see him in Jonathan Gannon's defense. You could move him all around, but that to me would be a great free agent signing. But I just think that they can find answers elsewhere for cheaper at different positions and address that pass rushing need in the draft. But Hassan Reddick, I think, in Gannon's defense would be really good. He could be a double-digit sack guy, I think. I would love to have him. But with the money that the Eagles, $21.5 million under the salary cap, I'm not sure how many big splurges you have in you, and that would be a big splurge, and that might eat up a lot of what you have to spend in the salary cap. So they could load up and get him. I don't really see that, but certainly can't be discounted. I would love to see him in this defense.
All right, last one from me, Ed. And before I get to it, I want to encourage everybody to follow Ed on Twitter at Kracz, KRACZE, SI.com/NFL/Eagles or EagleMaven.com, the easier way to get there. So I'm going to give you this question. We'll go back to the draft. Daniel Jeremiah, by the way, conference call today. We'll both be on that. So it's getting deep into draft season. We started this. I think we all agree the Eagles have 3 first-round picks. They're not going to take 3 first-round picks. So I'm going to give it to you this way. If you're trading up, say 15 and 19, to go up and get one player, who's the one player you'd go up and get? And you're probably talking about where 15, 19 probably gets you up to 9, 10 at best, maybe 8 if you throw something else in there. Is there one player you think Howie Roseman would say, I'm going to go up and get this guy?
Well, listen, if Kyle Hamilton's sitting there at 8,
I love Kyle Hamilton.
but I'm not sure Howie would do that for a safety. I mean, again, we're talking about getting playmakers for this defense, and Kyle Hamilton would certainly fit that bill. So that would be the guy I would go up for. Who would Howie go up for? I mean, it would have to be an edge rusher, I think, that they think is better than someone they can get at 15. Or maybe they'll just love Jermaine Johnson so much that they don't think he'll be there at 15, and we got to go get him at 8 because we just love Jermaine Johnson. But there's such a plethora of edge rushers in this draft, that are going to be first-round picks that I'm not sure they would do that. That's a good question. It would have to be a defensive playmaker, in my opinion, and I'm not sure who kind of fits that bill, other than maybe Hamilton or an edge rusher, like if Kayvon Thibodeau is falling from Oregon, or Aiden Hutchinson is falling, but I don't see those guys dropping out of the top 5 or 6. But yeah, I would go get Hamilton if he's still there. I don't think they would do it for a quarterback. I don't think they would go up and get Kenny Pickett, but there was that picture of Howie Roseman with his binoculars at a Pitt game this year, staring down Pickett. So maybe they love him and they say, we're going to go ahead of Washington and we're going to grab him so we don't have to play him twice a year in the NFC East.
Eddie K, we appreciate the Carolina blue, even though you might have to burn it if you're going to continue to back Sam Howell. He's got bust written all over him, Ed. Just remember you heard it here first. Always a pleasure when you come on. We'll get you back up again next week. Thanks, Ed. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, fellas. You too.
Thanks,
Ed Kracz from Sports Illustrated here with us on Birds 365. All right, come back. I got a couple more things I'm going to run by John, Eagles related. And then about 20 minutes from now, we're going to do a little bit of an out at down spot. John and I agreed yesterday, we really haven't got anybody on from Indianapolis to talk about Carson Wentz. I exchanged texts with a couple of guys yesterday, none of which could come on the show. John ended up getting Mike Chappelle, the Chappell, to join us, who's been the Hall of Fame voter in Indianapolis for years. The couple of guys I exchanged texts with, to a man, said, he's a goner. Not maybe, not they're leaning this way. Oh, he's done. The question is no longer if. And not that will it happen, but how it's going to happen. So we'll talk about that with Mike Chappell, who's going to hop aboard about 20 minutes from now on Carson Wentz. But a couple more Eagle things I want to ferret out with John McMullen next here on Birds 365.